People want to know what it feels like to come off of steroids cold turkey. Well, I was on anabolic steroids for 7 years, and unfortunately, I went to federal prison, sentenced to 120 months, and I had to go through this process not willingly. So the first thing I can say I felt physically was an overwhelming feeling of depression. Did that come from the hormone drop, or did that come because I was locked up, my bank accounts were being seized, my houses, cars, kids were taken from me, girl was locked up? It could have came from any of these things, but I'm sure the hormone crash on top of it didn't help. I would say after 1 month of not injecting hormones, I was the most shredded I had ever been. I could see every single muscle. I had the fingers all in my sides of my abs. I could see striations in my chest. I think a lot of that had to do with coming off of the hormones, and all the water retention was leaving my body. Being shredded like that didn't last long though. Soon after, I started to develop fat all around my waist and my stomach. My muscles started to shrink. My neck started to shrink. My voice even got softer. You start losing confidence in yourself. You just start feeling like a fucking bitch, pretty much. I'm a really strong-minded person, and it's hard to break me with anything, but these were times when I felt at my lowest emotionally, physically, mentally. These were times when I was at my weakest. Being on hormones that long and coming off like that can be very traumatic for the body, the brain, everything. It's physically and mentally one of the worst.
All right, so Tyler's exactly right. Coming off cold turkey is terrible, absolutely terrible. And I tell people this all the time. And a lot of people listen to me, but some people fail to listen. And this happened to me as well, but I didn't go to prison. I went to the military. So what I did was I went from, taking anabolics, training for the military, and then once I got the basic training, obviously I couldn't take any of that stuff with me. So in actual basic, it's only 8 weeks long. So thank God, like the esters were long enough to hold me over, right? But after basic is when I started to really feel it. I mean, I lost like 30 pounds. I mean, I came out of basic actually way smaller than I was before I went into basic. Obviously, that would make sense, right? But the thing about it is I really didn't have much time to think about it in the very beginning in basic, because it's like you're in shock. Your body's in shock. And I'm sure when he was in, prison, his body was in shock too, because, you're in prison. You got people around you that can hurt you. And the same thing with, I'm not going to say the same thing with basic, but in basic, you got people screaming at you, yelling at you a lot. Like, they always called basic, it was like a minimum security prison, because we weren't allowed to go nowhere. We weren't allowed to do nothing. We were stuck in the dorms for most of the day unless we were like escorted. So like they made fun of it and called it a minimum security prison, but I'm sure prison's way worse. But when you got people screaming at you and yelling at you all day long, or even just around you, it's going to put your body into shock. So yeah, I got super lean. Even my face, my neck, everything got super lean. And then after basic, thank God that I got out. I could, this was back in the day. So GNC had like Halo Draw and stuff like that on base. So like I could jump on that and get back to somewhat normal. And that's what I did. But he's exactly right. Like coming off cold turkey is the dumbest thing you can do. I mean, you have to be ready for it. You're going to feel terrible. Depression's going to set in. You're going to look worse than you've ever looked probably in your entire life. I mean, skinny wise. I didn't deal with the fat because I'm not I'm not an obese person. I don't know, like, I'm not saying Tyler is an obese person, but it's hard for me to gain fat. Like, it really is. It's because I'm an ecto. But anyway, so, like, he's absolutely right. So, like, when you come off, you got to do it right. You got to get HCG, Nava, a little bit of Clomid. If you can even do it without the Clomid if you have enough HCG. But it just depends. There's different ways to come off. And this is why people blast and cruise, though. You got people that will do a cycle of 400 milligrams per week. And then when they come off, they go to TRT and they do 200 milligrams per week. And that's extremely smart, too, because then you never crash.